Welcome back into the All Things Mizzou podcast presented by Missouri Tigers on SI. It has been a busy week for both football and basketball and women's basketball. A lot going on. And we're going to talk about quite a few things today. First off, we'll start with basketball and then we'll talk about football, wrap up spring football after hearing from Eli Drinkwitz. I'm Joey Van Zummeren, joined by Michael Stamps. Michael, let's head right into it with this basketball transfer portal. What have been your main thoughts about how Mizzou has handled this past week?
Well, first off, it seems like it's been like an endless whirlwind of news over the last 3 days, so hopefully it can just stop. A couple misses that I'm sure we're going to get into here in a second that I would imagine have left some people not so pleased. I think one of those guys, Kyan Evans, was definitely a person there was some interest in based on how he could shoot the ball and where he's from. People are going to be upset about that. Jaden Quaintance, who we all talked about, in hindsight, don't know how realistic that one was. Obviously, he probably had a massive asking price, so Kentucky makes sense for him. But still frustrating. I think the three guys they have are solid players. Sebastian Mack, I did a deep dive on him yesterday or 2 days ago. Um, I don't know when this is going to come out, but a couple days ago, he seems like a pretty talented player, really very good downhill attacker. That's definitely the kind of crown jewel of this class so far. But it's not unfair to say that there is an underwhelmed sense surrounding the three guys. That they've brought in, and I guess when you compare it to who's left, with Marcus Allen, Dayton Shaw, you can raise some questions there as to what you're bringing in that much better than what's gone. There's still some time left in the transfer portal, but it is it's ticking away. So with only a couple of weeks here left of it being open, so there's still time to make moves. People are still joining. I know there was some confirmed interest this morning in a veteran center, Eddie Lampkin, who's been in college longer than Josh Gray has. So there's always something like that you can go into, and there's plenty of people still entering and leaving. So maybe you cross your fingers that they're not done yet. But it is a fair sense to say based on who is left, who they brought in, and who they haven't been able to land, which that list is longer than you would like. There's a sense of being underwhelmed and maybe even a little bit of concern.
Yeah, and just when you look at this roster, I mean, Kyan Evans was a big one, obviously because of who he is as a player, but then also just the dwindling pool of that type, and Missouri has a lot of scoring production to replace. At point guard, obviously they add Sebastian Mack to this group, and has the traits that you mentioned, but not exactly strong as a 3-point shooter. And Kyan Evans provided that. So, Michael, I mean, just what do you make of kind of that hole Missouri has right now, and what are some names people should look out for there?
Yeah, that's a great question that I don't even know if I have the answer to right now because that list of names is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, especially at the guard position. The few that come to mind and that I have written down are Kennard Davis from Southern Illinois and Terrence Ginyard from UT Martin. Interesting, UT Martin connection there with him and Jacob Cruz and that fun stuff. Kennard Davis is a St. Louis guy, sophomore from Southern Illinois, so that one makes a little bit of sense. He's a 6'7" guard, so young, has a couple years of eligibility, and Ginyard as well, just a good scoring guard. Um, at this point, I feel like names are just bringing people in seems important. We can evaluate the talent and what they're going to do after, but you can't replace scoring, which I think I've said this before. I think it was around half of their scoring, points per game total that Missouri is losing with, Grill, Bates, Warwick, Perkins, those guys, heading out. You can't replace it if you don't bring anybody in. Like at least take a shot on some guys, to give yourself the chance. But the list is small, and I think that is the area for concern, especially when you think about, oh, we missed on Kyan Evans, Kwamari Peterson from East Tennessee State. That was another big name. A name that I really liked was Corey Washington from Wichita State. He moved his recruitment along pretty fast, but he was a 13-8 guy, 6'6", forward. He can shoot a little bit, attack. Didn't really have any chance of landing him, but there was quick interest there. Uh, Nick Graves is another one that I think I mentioned that committed to Creighton on the spot. So it it's again, like I said, it's fair to be concerned. Fair to be concerned. The names are dwindling to the point where I don't have much else to say about it because there's just not that many guys left available. And you can always read around and pick up on chatter for who's visiting where and who's getting showing interest in who. And there's just not that much of it right now with Missouri. And so much happens behind the scenes that we definitely don't know. So I'm not going to go out and pretend like I know everything that's going on because by all means I just don't. But from what I can tell you, the concern is probably pretty real with the fact that there's the list of people who are available is getting shorter, and not going to rule out the possibility that more people enter the portal that Missouri pursues, or maybe again it's not unrealistic that they have guys they want to go after that haven't entered the portal yet. That's kind of how it works now. But with only a couple weeks left, it does kind of seem like who's available. And portal recruitments move super fast as well. So maybe there's a guy they haven't reached out to yet. They reached out and there's an instant connection. I think I've heard this comparison before. It's kind of like speed dating, right? Where you don't really get much time to know what you're looking at, but you make the quick connection and then you build from there. So um, yeah, the list is small. The concern is probably pretty genuine. I think people should be given the benefit of the doubt to Dennis Gates and his staff, though, and trust them a little bit more, especially with some player development. Maybe they really think that the guys they have are going to be able to take on some bigger roles. But I mean, they just need some. They need some bodies at this point, and they added a couple. And I guess it's a good start just for creating that depth that Dennis Gates likes. But there is a long way to go and a period of time that is quickly fading away.
I'm sure Dennis Gates is in his office right now, very calm, preaching patience. That's just the type of guy he is. So we'll see what moves Missouri makes in these next 2 weeks here, but still some holes to fill. I mean, again, assuming making assumptions about the player development they made. And again, maybe that coaching staff feels content with where they're at with that and confident from what we can't see. Um, so interesting to watch there. As far as more departures from the program, this was an odd one yesterday. Josh Gray entering the transfer portal, apparently. um, Josh Gray somehow, well, doesn't appear to have any eligibility left. He's played 5 years. He utilized his COVID-19 year. That was what he had to use for this past year with Missouri. So not sure what's going on there, but ultimately there's not too much analysis to give because Josh Gray was not expected to be back on this Missouri roster anyways. And we'll see what develops with that. And then also Rob Summers, assistant coach for Missouri this past season, taking the head coach job at Cleveland State. He was a candidate that was mentioned early on in that search, has a connection back to there as well. So losing that, they're also losing Nick Korda, who's a member of the staff, director of basketball operation. He's taken a job at Minnesota. So losing two staff members there that Dennis Gates will have to look out for, look to replace. But anything to add as far as Josh Gray's mysterious portal entry and Rob Summers leaving, Michael?
For the sake of time, I'll keep what I have to say about Josh Gray brief. It doesn't really make any impact on Missouri at all. There was the assumption was that he was not returning. It's confusing. I think the case of entering the transfer portal with technically no eligibility remaining is probably not as uncommon as we think it is. Um, I don't want to guess and try to speculate and say the wrong thing about what the case is. But generally, it seems like he's going to do some sort of waiver application, right, to see if he can get that extra year granted. So, doesn't change anything. Like I said, the development at center is still up for grabs between Peyton Marshall, Trent Birds, and I guess Luke Northweather as well. So, doesn't change anything. It's interesting. For the sake of curiosity, I think we'll all be following if he's able to play another year and where that happens, maybe he'll play another season in the SEC. Who knows? And with Rob Summers, I think I can't remember who blasted this quote out around the time yesterday, I guess on Wednesday when that was announced. But Dennis Gates a while back said that he thinks all of his assistants are head coaches. So I guess it's not a surprise to see Rob Summers end up with the head coaching gig. He was with Dennis Gates at Cleveland State, so it makes sense. And I guess congratulations to him. He does have that role to fill now, but it's with you know, taking it back to myself, Greg McDermott at Creighton has had plenty of assistant coaches end up getting hired as head coaches and move up in the world. I mean, Darren DeVries, who's now at Indiana, was a Greg McDermott assistant. So I like to think that a sign of a good head coach is if your assistants end up being head coaches elsewhere. So hopefully, and maybe it's the start of a good head coaching career for Rob Summers.
Absolutely, yeah. It's nothing but a good thing to have your program get head coaches hired, unless it's a lateral move. When that's happening, it's a little bit more concerning that you're a jumping pad and not a jumping pad for assistants to head coaches and not just laterally once guys prove themselves and can get a higher contract. Um, but again, having guys get hired as head coaches only means good things for the perception of your program and the guys you're able to hire going forward. On to the football side of things, wrapping it up with men's basketball. On to football. Again, we heard from Eli Drinkwitz earlier in this week to recap spring practices, take a look ahead to the spring transfer portal. Spoiler alert on the spring transfer portal, they aren't looking for any position in particular, at least from what Drinkwitz said. A lot of confidence there. He believes it's the best team he's ever coached at Missouri. So a lot of confidence in the roster, which I would say for now tracks. You look at this roster, there's no position like we talked about a few weeks ago. There is positions where they could add somebody, but there's no spot on the roster where you look at like, man, they really need to add some more depth or a starter here. But really, I mean, from the track record that Drinkwitz has got on the transfer portal now, if there's a top guy available in the portal that Missouri could use, expect them to be in that conversation at least. He also said they expect to have around 8 entries in this transfer portal cycle, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more. One of the first of those, well, the first one was Drew Pine, and then the second being Ja'Kai Lane, who announced he'd be entering the portal on Wednesday. So Ja'Kai Lane, I think, is a little bit disappointing of a loss. He's a redshirt freshman. Exciting prospect for sure. He's in a very deep edge group. So ultimately, it's not too surprising to see somebody out of that group look for other opportunities. But Michael, just what's your thoughts on how Ja'Kai leaving impacts this group?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could say much outside of what you just said. It's an unfortunate thing for the future and for the sake of development, but uh, we've hit on this so many times, but it's just kind of how it works. He's a talented player. He made contributions last year. It's pretty clear with who they brought in. Obviously, Nate Johnson, Damon Wilson, Zion's coming back, and Darius Smith seems primed to take on a bigger role. Maybe he just seemed like the odd man out. I just you can't discredit a guy at this point for wanting to go find more playing time, and I think it is good that he has a season of production at the Power Five level under his belt now, and it wasn't just like a fluke. Like he played really good football and meaningful snaps when he was on the field, so he'll be able to go play for a good team again. Not a guy you'd love to lose at all, especially given people who could leave next season. He probably looked, he was only I guess a redshirt sophomore, so he had plenty of time, or plenty of years of eligibility, so could have been a productive player in the future. But now that he knows he can play, and he had a season of production, it makes sense that he wants to continue that. He probably doesn't want to halt his development by not sitting on the bench. So it makes sense. It's unfortunate. Probably a guy that was going to contribute in the future, but with how the transfer portal works now, you can't really blame a guy for wanting to go leave.
Right. In this game of, because Ja'Kai Lane obviously, ultimately, if he stuck around, probably would have played a big role in next year and the year after that as well. But it's difficult really to play that game of looking at future rosters because no clue at all what that's going to look like. But I'm going to do the same thing that I'm advising against with this edge roster because even with Lane leaving, they still have a few guys that will be have at least have eligibility for next year. Could stick around. Damon Wilson is only a junior. You have Darius Smith, who's a redshirt junior. You have Nate Johnson, a junior. I'm really excited to see Nate Johnson. I'll tell you that. Javion Hilson, a true freshman and really highly touted recruit. So ultimately, I mean, they're going to have more than enough depth at edge this year. You're losing a piece that would have been a impactful player in the future more than likely, but you know you win some, you lose some with college football nowadays. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that edge group. Drinkwitz said you could see 6, 7 guys getting valuable playing time there, and I would agree with him. I mean, from the transfers they added, Nate Johnson. Well, I mean, Nate Johnson, I would say, has more playing time than Damon Wilson got at Georgia. Um, but Nate Johnson had the production his freshman season, had that drop off his sophomore year. I think he's going to be important. I think a guy that Missouri fans are probably talking about enough, but not on the outside, and maybe in the fan base too, is Zion Young. I think he's going to have a pretty incredible season. Obviously, Damon Wilson in the mix there. It's almost difficult to predict outside of that. Eddie Kelly Jr., valuable depth guy last year as well. But Michael, just what are your thoughts on how this edge room will shake up? Where will the snaps go?
Yeah, I mean, this morning I wrote and talked about the defensive end room, obviously, and how do they manage the depth? I asked the question. I didn't answer the question because I have no idea how they're going to be able to play all these guys because they're all so good. And you make a great point about Zion Young. If I had to, pinpoint one returner on this team that I am the most excited for, I think it's him. He is so good, and I hope that he earns his opportunity. To be a more than just a rotational guy, to be a starter. But yeah, I don't know how they balance all the talent. It's not a bad problem to have. This is exactly what I said. It's not a bad problem to have, but it definitely poses some challenges because with how the transfer portal works now, you don't want any of those guys to leave at this point. This is probably the group of players that Eli Drinkwitz and the defensive coaching staff is set on having, and they want these guys to stay. So you're gonna have to find a way to make everyone happy because that's kind of just how it works now. And obviously, Javion, Nate, Langdon Kitchen, Damon Wilson, Darius Smith all have eligibility. Like they're all going to have eligibility past this season, which I guess is a positive. So maybe you can bank on that. I mean, eligibility doesn't really seem to exist anymore. So maybe Zion Young will be able to play another season. But I mean, it's not a bad problem to have. It's not an unfair assumption to say it's the best position on the defense or maybe the best position on the entire team. It's exciting, right? It's there's so many talented players. Obviously, Damon Wilson has that 5-star or top 50 recruit pedigree, and Nate Johnson, like you said, it was super productive at his previous stop. So I don't have an answer to how they can manage the issue besides you just put them all on the field and see who fits. I do think it's important that there is um, a mix of skill sets out of those guys. It's not just like they're all clones of each other. I think about Eddie Kelly. I mean, he is 6'5", 280 pounds. That's a lot substantially more size than just about anybody else in the room. But then you look at Darius Smith, who is listed at 6'5", 240, and he has track speed, right? I think I don't remember the exact numbers that Eli Drinkwitz was throwing out, but he mentioned some sort of athletic speed test on Tuesday and threw Darius and Damon Wilson's name out, and maybe Nate Johnson as well. So the athleticism on that group is incredible. But then you have guys like Zion Young and Eddie Kelly who are massive and can use more power. So there's a very unique blend of skill sets that it's going to be interesting to see how they use them all. I didn't even mention Javion Hilson, but he has more of that prototypical, not prototypical, but a lot of the size you see of these guys coming out of high school where they're taller and slim, but the athleticism is through the roof. I would imagine he is a ridiculous athlete. We haven't really seen him at all yet, but Drinkwitz said he's earned some, has put himself in a spot to earn some playing time. So that could be a name we see too. I mean, like I said, not a bad problem to have. to have this many players that you can play at what position. And like I said, it's not an unfair thing to say that this might be the most talented group on the team.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said there about the diversity of the skill set in this room. That's what I was looking at when you were talking of just looking at the sizes on these roster. Like you mentioned, Eddie Kelly is a pretty big guy, 6'5", 280. And I mean, they kind of, I mean, Jakai was kind of the closest that fell into that mold as well. Really good run stuffer. And I imagine Eddie's going to be using that similar role that he was last year. Zion Young, almost, well, in the middle size wise, he's 6'5", 260. But he is definitely more power based. I would say he is definitely quick around the corner, but more power based than a Javion Hilson or a Nate Johnson or a Damon Wilson. All three of those guys. I mean, Nate Johnson 249, Javion Hilson 6'4", 235, Wilson 6'4", 245. Um, so just a really exciting group, and ultimately, I mean, we're not too far off from being in the dead period of the off season for both football and basketball. And then we'll finally get into really taking a closer look at this 2025 team and trying to take a look at what their 2025 season will look like. But really, this defense, I mean, on paper at least, there's so much to be excited about. And this, I mean, there's going to be so many questions about the offense because of the tenants of that side of the ball that are now leaving with Brady Cook, Theo Weiss, and Luther Burden. And they've obviously replaced, at least in the wide receiver room, they've replaced that talent with Kevin Coleman, very proven guy. They're relying on the development of a lot of guys, though, on that side of the ball at wide receiver with Joshua Manning, with Marquise Johnson. I mean, at running back, I think Ahmad Hardy is going to be great. But at quarterback, we don't know who that starter is going to be. And no matter who that starter is, when we get to this in a second, no matter who that starter is going to be not have a season as a starter under his belt at the very least. Sam Horn, I believe, has like 6 collegiate passing attempts to his name. Bo Prabila got a little bit more playing time with Penn State, but again, never as their full-time starter. Um, and then you're losing 3 starters on the offensive line. So the point here being, no matter what happens with that offense, there's reasons to believe that side of the ball will be good, if not better. But no matter what happens with the offense, the main thing for this team is going to be this defense. I think this can be an elite group in the SEC, and that will, I think, determine ultimately how far they can go, or at least, considering assuming that the offense won't be a anchor to them if they can't figure it out. So overall, I mean, the edge group, like you said, is probably the best on the roster, and this defense overall. Just hearing the guys drink what's going through and being reminded of the depth they have at a lot of these positions, on paper at least, it's a really good group. But obviously, there's a reason they take the field on Saturday.
I think another thing to think about just defensively in general, when I, even Eli Drickwood said that he thinks the defense is ahead of the offense right now. It makes sense when you think about like the magnitude of the transfers they made on both sides of the ball. Like when you think about, okay, we got Makai Bayor and Josiah Trotter at linebacker, right? Those are proven, experienced guys. Let's flip over to the offensive side of the ball, offensive line. Like Johnny Williams, potential based, not the most experienced by any means. Dominic Judice, right? Experience, but not a proven. I guess he's semi-proven, but not like a solidified starting guy. So I just think some of the magnitude of the moves, like it kind of makes sense that the defense is ahead, and then I mean common sense here, but who's returning on both sides of the ball also makes a difference. When you can return guys like Dalen Cardell and Tristan Newson, it makes and Zion Young and Chris McClellan, Drayden Norwood, so many cornerstones. It makes sense that the defense is going to be ahead both on the field and leadership wise as well.
Yeah, I would have to think on this too, as far as leadership and returning starters. I mean, there's a good amount of returning starters on offense, but as far as guys that have been there 2023 and 2024 compared to the defense, obviously Dalen Carnell is the leader in that group defensively, but on offense, Connor Tolson is entering his fourth year as the starting center. At left guard, Caden Green. I mean, he's only a junior, but entering his second year. Brett Norfleet entering his third year as the starter for this team. So that's a good point too of just the difference of the experience, and even that applies to Bo Pabula. That applies to Ahmad Hardy as well. Again, he's proven, but at a lesser level, and obviously is only entering his second year of college football. Let's round it out here, talking about two things: quarterback competition, and then everything that's happening along the offensive line. The two most interesting position groups for this offense, I would say. As far as quarterback, we hit on it of the difference between Bo and Sam and what they add. It's difficult, as we were talking before the show here, to give too much of an evaluation of with Sam Horn, you're getting this. With Bo Pabula, you're getting this. It's difficult to compare those playing styles because of just how little we've seen them in these last few years. Bo has a little bit more on tape, but ultimately, I think there's a tendency, and I think we were no exception to it, of recency bias of the shiny new toy of Bo Pabula and forgetting about what Sam Horn has. And ultimately, too, though, I mean, like again, we've talked about the price tag they've reportedly paid for Bo Pabula and how much, like, is that a guy, is that an investment you want to put on the bench? But ultimately, I think Eli Drinkwitz has done a good job of really sticking true to not caring about ratings, not caring about price tags, and ultimately just putting what's best for the team out there. Um, and I mean, either way, you're investing that into the quarterback room. And Sam Horn, I mean, is an improving guy, so it's not like um, he has much to carry into negotiations. Um, and we talked about last episode how difficult it is to kind of evaluate all of that cap space and maneuvering and whatnot. But either way, again, from hearing Eli Drinkwitz talk this past week and hearing how similar it was to what he said at the start of spring camp, that his mind, like Sam Horn, is very much in this conversation. Um, and again, don't fall victim to recency bias. Sam Horn was rated higher than Bo Pabula in that very same high school class, about 12 spots higher, if I recall correctly. Obviously, there is the very valid question of Tommy John surgery that can completely change the way you throw the ball. Sam Horn would presumably be a little bit more rusty because, again, he hasn't had the same experience that Bo Pabula has. So again, I hesitate to select a real front runner in this group. I hesitate to say this guy's playing style will fit them better. Sam Horn, it definitely, undeniably does help him out that he's been in the system for each of the past three seasons. The familiarity with Kirby Moore, so and also leadership wise to already have connections with a lot of his teammates. So other than that, though, it's difficult to say. And again, with spring practices, it's not like we were able to sit there and watch Bo and Sam throw side by side for more than 3-4 minutes at a time. So I think we'll find out in fall camp. Because that was in 2023 when they were having the competition between Brady, Sam, and Jake Garcia. Um, I won't make fun of Jake Garcia's volume of schools, but that it became pretty clear once fall camp started that Brady was probably going to win it. That Jake Garcia was definitely not in the competition, and Sam Horn was lagging behind a little bit. So ultimately, I think we'll find out in fall, and I think the team itself will find out in fall. As Drinkwitz said, he's pretty much said the starting quarterback will reveal itself from a leadership standpoint, just how they go about themselves without needing that official title. So it's going to be a fun July and August for this program. Any thoughts out there, Michael?
Yeah, I feel like just talking with you and other people, it felt a little bit like smoke screeny with saying there was a quarterback competition. That is definitely not the case, and you kind of alluded to it, but I respect it. The fact that not that he's throwing Bo Pabula's alleged price tag out the window, but at this point it doesn't matter. It's straight up competition, which I could appreciate. And yeah, we have no idea who is ahead in the quarterback battle. We might not know until like week 3 of the season. I'm sure everyone's going to get an equal opportunity, or not equal, but get their shot once the season comes along. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I don't really have much else to say besides that. I mean, I don't know who has the lean out of the two. I will say, it's slightly off topic. It was nice to hear a progress report about Matt Zollers, that he his development is going well, and he seems to be not 100% healthy, but given where his health is at, that he's been able to compete and show some good things there, and then get healthy with the strength and conditioning staff. So that's a good sign. I guess not really for this season. I'd be surprised if he touches the field this season, but that's always good to hear. But yeah, I don't really have much else to say on those two. It's going to be interesting to see who ends up taking the spot, and I couldn't tell you who it's going to be.
Yeah, what you mentioned there about how long will it go into? Will it go into the regular season, or will they have one before week one? What's the opportunity going to shake out like? Famously in 2023, Brady Cook got like 25 pass attempts against South Dakota State, and Sam Horn got 5, and that was supposed to be the test run for the competition, and that was Drinkwitz was decided after that. So ultimately, I think what happened there was like I don't know what happened there actually, but I wouldn't be surprised if like just in the weeks leading up to it that Brady Cook revealed himself as the best leader of that group, more consistent. And obviously, Sam Horn was quite a bit younger at that time. So leadership, I mean, is clearly very important to Eli Drinkwitz, no matter how many times it sounds like coach speak. But I definitely think it's a factor to watch from even on the outside, just seeing how these players talk about their teammate.
Yeah, and I mean, game number 2 of the season, I completely forgot about this when I just said that, but game number 2 of the season is Kansas, and that's I don't know where Kansas football stands right now, and rivalries aside, that's going to be a harder game than Central Arkansas and Louisiana and UMass. I would hope. So not that you want to have a person decided by then, but it might be nice to not have any quarterback turmoil when you're taking on a Power Five team, because just naturally those games are going to be a little bit more challenging. So again, it might take longer than that, but just kind of throwing that out there, that will be a pretty good early season evaluator, I guess, of not only where the team is at, but who's playing at the quarterback spot.
Yeah, and I do think it's good too to have had this spring where they spent it um, evenly in practice as far as being able to establish timing with wide receivers and everybody else. Drinkwitz mentioned that they weren't going to go out of the spring practice looking to name a starting quarterback. The only thing they learned about it was that Drew Pine was not a factor in this competition. Um, so to have that time where Drinkwitz said the purpose was to not have that pressure on them, which I think is positive factor. And then also, again, being able to establish that timing connection with all the wide receiver group. Onto the offensive line, again, 3 starting spots up for grabs, basically. And so the one we got at that is right tackle. Keegan Truss, Drinkwood said, has pretty well established himself there as a leader in that group. So then it's down to right guard and left tackle. Connor Tollison, presuming Connor Tollison will be back at the start of the season. And so at left tackle, Javen Richardson, we've talked about multiple times, I think would be the leading name in that group. There's also Johnny Williams, the West Virginia transfer, and there's Logan Reichert, who is recovering from a foot injury that kept him out of most of the spring. He suffered it late last year. So unfortunate for him. And then Dominic Jaitis was taking the starting center snaps while Tollison missed the spring, and could very well, he has experience at right guard, could very well slot in there unless, again, Logan Reichert, right guard was another spot Drinkwitz mentioned for Logan Reichert to compete for a starting job there. If I had to predict, I would, again, I would think Javen Richardson is pretty set at left tackle, and right guard, I mean, it's anybody's guess whether they're going to go with experience with Dominic, or we're going to see finally Logan Reichert get an opportunity. Any thoughts there, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, with right guard, I guess my 2 cents would be maybe it leans towards Dominic just because Logan's you know, been a little bit beat up and is still coming off that injury, and he was playing this, taking the center snaps. So if he was taking the center snaps, I don't know who was taking the right guard snaps. Maybe it was Logan or it was something else. I don't know how that all works, but maybe you'd think just because he's been on the field and has been involved with the first team offense that gives him the nod at right guard. And then I agree with Javen Richardson. I think the general consensus still, with what we heard from Brandon Jones a while back, but also coming in, is that Johnny Williams was a pretty raw um, prospect. Not that he was completely unpolished and unexperienced, but that he still he had a little bit of ways to go. And correct me if I'm wrong. I believe he's I think he's a sophomore, right? So he's
Yep.
still he's got some time. And Javen is what, a senior or a junior. So they both still got eligibility. Um,
Yeah, Javen, he'll have the JUCO year, so he might as well be a junior.
okay, yeah, okay, gotcha. So yeah, those are interesting. I I don't want to act like I'm concerned at those spots, but I don't know. I don't think we've seen enough of Javen Richardson to be purely confident that he's going to be a solid starting left tackle. I mean, he competed with Marcus Bryant, last spring, summer and fall. So there's that, I guess. And he has the year of practice under his belt. And Logan Reichert's a guy that we've been talking about, kind of coming up the ranks for a while. So maybe there's some confidence there as well. It's just going to be interesting to see, how ready those guys are to step into a role. And then one more thing before I throw it back to you, Joey. I asked Eli Drinkwitz about Keegan Truss and what he had done to earn his starting role, and it was a pure athleticism thing that he didn't know. He said he didn't know how athletic and how physical Keegan was, and he learned pretty quickly that that's not going to be an issue at all. Looking at the offensive line additions and what spots were open, it's definitely fair to say that Keegan was the guy we were probably the most confident that was gonna be able to earn a starting spot right away. So not surprising to hear he's pretty safely secured that right tackle spot, but just interesting to hear how he's fitting in. That it's he has the athleticism and physicality to compete on the team and then in the SEC in general.
Absolutely. And then the two deep is difficult to predict until we know the starters, because with any offensive line, there's just so many moving pieces. I would say Tristan Wilson is also a guy they like there. Um, I would have to look back at my notes, but that's a good question of who was taking the right guard snaps. It might have been Tristan Wilson, um, especially if Logan Riker was unable to go. So, lot to watch with that group. Again, it's going to be an exciting August and July for this entire team. And then we learned today that their game, surprise, their week one game has been moved to Thursday, as has become tradition. The Mizzou football account said it's a tradition unlike any other. I was like, is it really that? That's I that's
It
what
just
crazy.
get just gives students a reason not to go to
Yeah.
school, including us.
Exactly. Those, hey, I've gone to classes on the Friday after. It's a rough ordeal. That'll do it for us on this episode of the All Things Mizzou podcast. We appreciate you tuning in and hope you do the same for the rest of our coverage.